Hello, my beautiful friends. Thank you for joining me for our second episode of this new series that we're doing, where I am sharing your true crime stories that you emailed to me. The response was abundantly clear that you would like more of these, and I have much more to read for you. The emails have just been constantly coming in, so thank you for sending them in, as always, for trusting me with these as well. I think one of the reasons why this is resonating with so many people and why I really wanted to do this is because there's just an element of knowing that it's coming from somebody who you almost feel like you're watching the same channel. We've got our own little true crime community family here. And so you feel, I think, a closer connection to these stories. And it gives us that reminder that all these things we talk about are not just fabricated. This can happen to anybody at any time, anywhere. Two reasons why I'm really happy that you are enjoying this and I can continue to do this is, one, I know that sharing a story that is hard for somebody to do is also really therapeutic. Having a voice and feeling like you're heard, it's really powerful. It allows you to get something off your chest if you've never shared it before and just put it out there, and you regained back all of that power that you had, that you were so scared to say out loud or confront. The second reason I'm really happy that I can continue to do this is sharing these stories also brings added attention and awareness to somebody who might find themselves in a similar situation and can reflect back and be like, okay, this isn't right. We hear that said so many times, if anything can be learned from a tragic situation, it's that it doesn't repeat itself. So thank you for sending in your stories. Thank you for watching them and for the amazing feedback you guys have given me. I also wanted to give a quick mention and shout out a couple other channels who, if you like this type of content, I am by no means came up with this on my own. I don't think anybody's doing it for true crime, which I really feel there is a need for, just based on those two reasons why I'm happy you are receptive to it. I really want people to learn from these situations, and I also want people to have a outlet to kind of get things off of their chest and gain some power back. But if you like this kind of style, a couple other channels you should check out are one, Charlotte Dobre. She's hilarious. She doesn't always do these types of reading your story. She's got such an amazing library of different content, but she does read a lot of things from Reddit and also some submissions that she comes across. Another channel that has great content where she reads viewer submissions is CJ's. Her name is Courtney, and she reads your own submissions of paranormal stories. So like kind of the spooky aspect, really awesome. And if you like anti-MLM content, go check out Hannah Alonso. She also has a series where she reads people's submissions of MLM horror stories. So lots of different types of genre there for you to watch if you like this style. All right, let's get started. Here is our first story. Hi, Sherilyn. I'm going to share a true story with you and your audience. This is the ultimate act of domestic violence. My therapist said you will never have an answer to why. You can't explain crazy. I think it's if I can't have you, no one can. My sister Valerie was the middle sister. We were all 1 year apart. I'm the oldest, and our younger sister is Kathleen. We were brought up by a very strong mom who is an angel from 3, 4, and 5 years old due to our father's alcoholism. Valerie was very maternal, loved animals and those less fortunate. She was an honor roll student and worked 3 jobs and went to school. Crazy responsible. However, she got involved with alcohol, our father was an alcoholic, and drugs, and had 2 daughters with the same man. It got really bad, but she was able to go inpatient and pull herself together and become the best mom. She lived in Hamden, Massachusetts. I believe some things she allowed with her oldest because of her guilt about when she was actively drinking. She was amazing to all my niece's friends, fed all the feral cats behind her home, always had a bag of cat food in her car to feed kitties in her path. She was an amazing human being. We were best friends and talked 1 to 3 times daily. She watched my youngest, 2 years younger than her youngest. They've always been best friends when I needed her. My 11-year-old niece absolutely hated to be away from her mom. She'd sleep at my house but made excuses not to leave her side to stay at friends' houses. I was the same. On July 30th, 2010, my sister and 15-year-old niece got a phone call from my 11-year-old niece who they convinced to sleep over at her friend's house. She said she felt like something bad was going to happen. My sister rolled her eyes and said, I could throw a rock and hit you. You are so close to home. I will be there bright and early tomorrow to pick you up. They hung up. My sister lived with her boyfriend, who went to sleep early. My sister followed soon after. My 15-year-old niece had broken up with her boyfriend a couple weeks prior. She went to sleep too. At 3:30 in the morning, my sister was woken up by the dog barking. She told her boyfriend to go see what he was barking at. He padded into the kitchen and could smell the basement. As he was closing the basement door, my sister was opening up my 15-year-old niece's bedroom door, and he was standing there, naked from the waist down, in the dark, with a ski mask on and a knife in his hand. He ran past my sister towards her boyfriend, probably to disable the man in the house, and started stabbing him, then slit his throat. He then went after my sister. They were screaming at him, knowing even with the ski mask, it was her 15-year-old daughter's ex-boyfriend, who my sister bought clothes for, helped him apply to schools, fed him, and was absolutely amazing too. We love you. Why are you doing this? Why are you killing us? This woke my 15-year-old niece up. For all my sister knew, she was dead in that bedroom. My niece told me later that she knew when she opened the door that her life was about to change forever. My niece came out of her bedroom and he was stabbing her mother. She jumped on his back and he threw her off. My sister, her mother, fell to the floor face down. She turned herself over and eyed my niece to run. My niece told me she looked at her mother and ran for the front door. He yelled, "Oh no you don't," and chased her, grabbing her by her ponytail over the dog gate to her mother. Lifted my sister's chin. And slit her throat, making my niece watch him kill her mother. Ooh, this is tough. He slapped my sister's face and laughed, saying, "That's done." My sister's boyfriend was trying to get out the back door and he ran over at him and stabbed him in the back as he got out. My niece told me, "I looked down at mommy and she seemed so small. I just wanted to lay next to her, but I knew she wanted me to run. So I ran out the front door. She was only in her boxer shorts and t-shirt and ran in the pitch darkness. She knocked on the next door neighbor's door and could hear his dogs barking, but he wouldn't answer, so she ran up the street. Hampton is a very small farming community, so she dove into a passing car and said, 'My ex-boyfriend is at my house killing everyone.' He pulled over and told her to get out. She got out and ran again, and then a police car pulled up. I'm sure the neighbors or the kid in the car had called them. They rolled down the window and asked her what was wrong. She told them and said, 'Let me in,' not knowing if he was chasing her, and they reluctantly let her in and called what she said was a hysterical utterance. They drove to the front of the house and my sister's boyfriend was crawling in the yard to the side of the road. The cops rolled down the window a bit and asked him to crawl to the other side of the road. They had guns, for crying out loud. An ambulance with 2 female EMTs pulled up. One had seen a male without a shirt on riding a bicycle into the city and said to her partner, "He may have something to do with where we are going. Remember him." The cops asked them if they felt comfortable scooping my sister's boyfriend up and bringing him to the hospital. They said, "That's our job." Good for them. My sister's boyfriend had bled out and needed surgery to close his throat with staples and remove part of his lung. He couldn't even come to my sister's funeral 2 weeks later. My mother lost her daughter, both nieces lost their mommy, and my sister and I lost our sissy. We were a very close family. At the trial, my niece had to testify with him right there, and my sister's boyfriend as well. We found out he rode his bicycle from Springfield to Hampton, about 9 miles, to break into the basement and go upstairs to kill everybody. My 11-year-old niece said in her victim impact statement, "You were like my brother, helped me with my math homework, and then killed my mommy. Why? He got life without parole plus 8 years. I have forgiven him for myself and all concerned. I know my sister would be the first to do so." Oh, gosh. I got custody of my 15-year-old goddaughter/niece. I got her the best trauma therapist. They still text each other today. She graduated top of her high school class, spoke for the DA, educators, and students about domestic violence. Many in their first relationship don't understand that them telling you who you can be around and what you wear is abuse. Amen. I'm so glad you brought that up because those early relationships, we were just not equipped at all. And there's almost that element of, oh, they care, right? They heard the story from their peer. She graduated from the University of Massachusetts honors program. She's traveled the world and now teaches English in Barcelona, Spain. Oh my God, good for her. She's an amazing poet who does spoken word and is an incredible stand-up comedian. Wow. She wants to make her mom proud, and I know she has. She will not let him define her life. She's my little hero. I work with the Homicide Bereavement Program and speak to prisoners and scholars at prison and colleges about domestic violence, TV, radio, etc. I don't want my sister ever forgotten. We are all survivors, not victims. If you have any questions at all, I'd be happy to share anything with you. I love what you do. Warmly, Gina. Oh my gosh, Gina, I cannot thank you enough for sharing this story. That was tough, but like I said, these stories that we don't usually hear are so important. I can't even imagine how many lives you and your niece and your family have touched. And your sister. I'm so sorry for your loss. Gina has graciously shared photos of her beautiful sister, and I will add them here so that you can see her too. I love me some good stand-up comedy, so if your niece has a link or a YouTube page or an Instagram or anything like that where we can check her out or even go to a show and support her, I would love if you could let us know. Okay, the next story. Hi, Sherilyn. I'm not usually one to send any stories in, or much less want to, as I don't really speak much on my life in itself, especially situations where I have tried very much to move on and heal from it in the best of my abilities. Yet, I feel like this may be a healing process for me to do so, as not many people know this story except for a few people, one of which was my cousin, who I am no longer in good standing with. I'm not good with details and such, so I do apologize, but I will do my best here. I'm sure you're going to do great. Thank you for allowing us subscribers/viewers to be able to do this. If possible, I would like my name to not be mentioned, as I don't want any details out there for this man to ever find me again, as I still fear for my life. I don't remember much, as said before. I'm sure that my mind has blocked out a lot of things from the trauma of the situation, but I will do my best. My family and I had moved into this house at least 2 or 3 months prior. It was requested by me, being the drama queen, girl same, that I must get the biggest bedroom, which just so happened to have been towards the end of the house. It was the first house in all of my life that we had lived in, and of course at the time I was excited to be able to not live in an apartment anymore. I don't know if maybe the situation of the house and the things we experienced there were supernatural related. Yes, ghosts may have been involved in this situation, but it was one that I could not have explained, as well as, I'm sure, mental health related issues. This particular night, I begged my cousin to spend the night with me, who was already scared to be in the house due to the first night there and the situation with my sister and her now ex-boyfriend at the time of this email. My parents had fallen asleep really early that night, and the routine of me and my cousin was for us to get my mom's keys out of her purse and go listen to music in her car. Oh my gosh, that just unlocked a memory of mine. I loved doing that with my friends. My mother was well aware and knew of that. She didn't care as long as we didn't run the battery down. Although this night, the situation was different. She had asked me that night to hide her keys. She didn't explain why, just told me how important it was. I agreed and hid them in my dresser. She had instructed me if we were to go anywhere, the keys must go with me. I must see them at all times. She had fallen asleep shortly after. Me and my cousin had walked across to the small convenience store that was maybe 3 or 4 feet away from our house, at least one house down. My cousin's mom worked there at the period of time. We stayed there till the store closed and went back to my house with candy we had been given for helping her mom close up that night. We went to my room and decided to watch TV. It's not even 20 minutes later when my sister's boyfriend bursts through my bedroom door with a pocket knife in hand, demanding the car keys. My cousin, who was 2 years younger than me, which at the time was at least 10 to 12 years old, if I'm remembering correctly, is freaking out. When I told this guy no, he had put the knife to my throat. Oh my gosh. Freaked out and scared, I did what he asked and gave him the keys. When given what he wanted, he demanded me and my cousin, go with him. He had drove us around my hometown. I have since moved states, music blaring, and trying to get him to enjoy the music with him. This man was in his 20s with 2 young girls in his car. I can't remember much else other than the car being pulled over and it being at my school. I had taken the blame for the situation till the next morning when we confided of the threat/knife situation to my mother, who I then begged not to say anything. It caused damage to mine and my sister's relationship at the time due to the fact that her then boyfriend was denying everything. Within 6 years of that whole situation, he had ended up in jail. I'm not sure for what, but I know he had ended up dating one of my close friends in that 6-year time frame. interesting because you were the younger sister and so young, and it was inappropriate for him to be in his 20s riding around with a 12-year-old. Thank you again for the opportunity to share these stories and the opportunity to even give some of us the healing process of these situations. I just wanted to mention, I don't proofread any of the stories that I'm going through. I obviously look to make sure that the detail is there and that if I need to confirm anything, or if I want to give somebody the opportunity to add more to the story, I can. But I find it so interesting that the theme of all of these that we're reading right now is how therapeutic it is to talk about. And again, all the more reason why I'm so thankful to be able to do this and why I'm so appreciative that you are so receptive to this, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It obviously is not something that's easy for you to talk about, and so understandably what happened to you at such a young age. It's so traumatic, and I think it almost becomes even more traumatic and intense as you get older because you start to reflect on how much worse that situation could be and how lucky you are to be alive. But in some times, when you think about how scary something was for you and that you didn't even maybe almost realize how scary at the time it was, you've got to learn to re-heal from it almost. So thank you again for trusting us with your story. Okay, the next story is, Hi Sherilyn, I've been a fan of your channel since the beginning of your true crime posts. Thank you. I love watching you grow since the start, and seeing where you are now has warmed my heart. All because of you guys. Your videos have truly given me something to look forward to every week. Now to the story. I don't know if this one really matters. It's not like anyone died or anything, and I know there are more important stories to tell, but this has been on my mind for a while and I figured you might not read it anyways. Oh, I'm reading it. And your story matters. You are validated. Your experience in sharing it is important. You honestly have no idea who you can touch out there. I'm not going to divulge any pertinent information regarding my name, assaulter's name, or the location. All of these places and names are not the real names. And that is absolutely okay. I was 16 years old and had been in a stable relationship for about 2 years at that point. My boyfriend was amazing, super caring, kind, and understanding. I loved him with my whole heart. There was a club we were in together with a few of our other friends. We would meet once or twice a week depending on our schedules. One of the members brought in 3 of his friends to join the club. We were all excited to have new members because we only had 8 or 9 at this point. I became friends with one of the other members. Let's call him Paul, and a few of his friends. We had events where we would fundraise in order to raise money for travel expenses. Paul and my boyfriend were becoming friends too. This was good because I knew my boyfriend needed more bros to hang out with, and I liked Paul, so I thought it was okay. At this point in my life, I was in a very dark place. I would be drinking a lot, self-harming, things like that. Even though I was only 16, I did not have the most stable home life, and I was deeply depressed. I was close friends with Paul's brother and would go over to the house sometimes. I got to know Paul a little bit better and thought he was a cool guy. During lunch, they would often bring pineapple, which was my favorite, even though I'm slightly allergic, that they would share with me. One day I didn't have any, and I made a joke about going pineapple-less for the day. Paul told me he could make it up to me by taking me to a store to buy me some snacks. Neither Paul or I had classes for our last 2 periods that day, so I thought, why not? Paul was a senior and I was a junior. He drove to a nearby convenience store and we went in and I bought some snacks. Some candy for my boyfriend and a bag of chips for myself. Good call, girl. I'm totally more of a chip gal too. We got back into the car and he started driving back towards the school. I was texting my boyfriend the entire time, letting him know where I was. Paul passed by the school and my heart started to race a little bit. I was trying to play it cool, telling him I wanted to make it back in time for my boyfriend's lunch so I could give him his candy. He was trying to convince me to go somewhere else, but I said no, so he brought me back to the school. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just assumed he really didn't want to go back to school, and I couldn't blame him for that. The next day he asked if I wanted to go to the store again, and I agreed. I was slightly intoxicated that day, but nothing extreme. That day my boyfriend and I were having a fight, so I didn't want to go back to school. Paul and I went to the store, then drove to a nearby shopping center. We got some food and books and went back to the car. We were talking for a while. I was telling him about my life and he was telling me about his. He was asking about my boyfriend and what kind of guy he was, so I told him that he was sweet but never stood up for me. There was a previous incident where a guy had been harassing me and my boyfriend did nothing about it. He grabbed my hand and told me he could treat me better than him and that he liked me. I pulled my hand away and told him that was sweet, but I'm in a happy relationship. He said okay, and drove behind a large building, saying he wanted some shade. I thought it was fine since he seemed to be taking it well, and after he said that, we continued joking around like we usually did. After a while of talking, Paul turned and told me he wanted to kiss me. I told him no because I had a boyfriend, but he was persistent. He kept grabbing my hand and kissing it, using every manipulation tactic in the book. You know you want to kiss me. I know I'm too ugly to kiss. Everyone hates me. And finally, I'll kill your boyfriend. I kept saying no, but he started leaning closer to me. I rolled down the window and stuck my head out so he couldn't reach. At that point, every time I was saying no, he was getting more and more aggressive, hitting my leg or even biting my hand. The entire time he was texting his friend in a group chat they had. He would take my phone out of my hands when I was texting my friend saying I didn't need it. Paul was a big guy. He was a wrestler, and he was 3 times bigger than me at the time. I was powerless against him. He eventually gave up and drove back to the school. I was beyond relief, thinking it was all over. He called his friend on his way back, who was Hispanic, and I said to him in Spanish, "Help, this man is trying to kiss me." The friend didn't tell Paul what I said, but when we got to the school, we were stuck in a line of traffic. I was jokingly saying, "Help," as to not alarm Paul, but he looked at me and said, "Do you really think my friends are going to help you?" At which point I left the car and made my way to my bus. I was slightly shaken up by this instance. Mind you, I had been in worse situations before, and honestly, I thought that's how they acted. I was still a little creeped out, but Paul texted me apologizing for how he was acting. He said that he wouldn't be able to take me out the next day though because he wasn't feeling well. I said okay and moved on. The next day I had drank a lot. I was past the point of being tipsy and I was stumbling all over the place. I saw Paul at lunch and told him I was drunk. He then asked me if I wanted to go out and I told him I thought he wasn't feeling well. He shrugged it off and said that he would buy me some pineapple. I agreed and got in the car with him again, still drunk and still drinking. He didn't drink anything at all. I wouldn't let him because he was the one driving and I didn't want to get in a wreck. Instead of going to a store, he took me to the same place where we were the day before, an empty parking lot behind a building. I was laying down and he told me it was more comfortable in the back seat, so I went in the back. He came to the back with me and proceeded to try to kiss me. I moved away from him but slammed my head in the window, which was now child locked. Paul started kissing me, and even when I told him to stop, he was taking pictures of me and sending them to his friends in their group chat. At some point, I managed to get Paul's phone and go through his messages with his friends. They were saying, "Kiss both lips," and $50 if you F her and send proof. There were about 5 guys in that group chat, all of whom were chiming in and cheering him on. Paul continued kissing me and I just spaced out. Like I said, I've been in situations like this before. I knew I couldn't stop it, so I looked out the window, into the trees, staring at the birds in the sky, trying to ignore what he was doing to me. He tried to take off my clothes and I fought him. Then he tried to take off his and I begged him not to. He was touching me and I kept telling him to stop. He wouldn't though, and he kept doing what he wanted. I won't go into any more detail, but you get the picture. He brought me back to school, and at this point, I was sober and shaking. I went home and told my mom what happened. I wasn't living with her at the time, but she was visiting that week. She told me it was my fault. I shouldn't have gotten in the car with him. I shouldn't have gotten drunk, and I shouldn't have acted like that, and I, quote, was a whore. Oh my gosh. I told my friends and they said I should report him. My mom told me there was nothing to report, and that if I did, I would get in trouble for leaving school and underage drinking. So I kept it to myself. Paul would text me here and there, but for the most part, we wouldn't talk. I broke up with my boyfriend 2 days later because I felt disgusted with myself. I felt deeper into my depression and my self-harm got worse. My friends eventually told my boyfriend what had happened to me. He came back to me saying that I wasn't going to leave him over something I had no control over. He came with me to confront the guys encouraging Paul in the group chat. I still did not report Paul or any of his friends. I was scared of what their other friends might do to me. As I said, I was friends with Paul's brother and became close with his family, and I didn't want to do anything that could mess things up for them. So for the most part, I kept quiet. I was struggling for months until I felt I could bear seeing Paul's face without wanting to throw up. I went to his house to hang out with his brother, who had promised me that Paul wouldn't be there. A few hours into us hanging out, Paul walks into the room. Everything was cordial and he stayed away from me, but after I left, his brother told me that Paul threatened him, telling him not to hang out with me or he would beat his ass. At this point, I'd become closer to one of the friends in the group chat who wasn't encouraging Paul during the instance. I went to him for help because I was genuinely terrified of Paul. The next day, I borrowed that friend's phone to find an assignment and saw messages between him and the other guys in the group chat, Paul included. They were all making fun of me, calling me a hoe, saying that I should die and that they wanted to kill me. Even this guy who I thought was my friend. From that point on, I've had extreme trust issues. It's not the sexual trauma that messes me up, but the fact that I allowed myself to be hurt. I put myself in that situation, so there's no one to blame but me. Oh, don't say that. I still haven't reported Paul, and I don't want to. I want him to be out of my life for good. I'm scared down to my bones of this man. My boyfriend and I are no longer together. Nothing was ever done to Paul or his disgusting friends. My friends stuck by me and supported me, however, but since that day, I have never been the same. Despite having gone through similar situations, they were always ones that were out of my control. I couldn't have avoided them even if I wanted to. But Paul was completely my fault. Not only can I not trust people around me, people I think are good, but I can't even trust myself anymore. Thank you for letting me share my story. I'm strong and I'm getting through this, but talking about it and sharing it really gives me the opportunity to heal as best as I can. Oh my gosh, I have so many words. First of all, nothing is your fault. When you say no to somebody, no is no. And I think this story is so important because unfortunately, this is extremely common in high school situations, I feel. I can't even imagine what it's like now with like cell phones and photos and social media. I know of so many situations where girls that I went to school with, their lives were ruined for so long. And I'm sure there's a point where they still reflect and think about it because they would go to a house party and they would drink. Everybody was drinking. And you let down your guard and they would be taken advantage of. And the disgusting common theme was that guys would egg on their friends to hook up with them or do something with them while they were completely out of their mind. And everybody was watching it happen in a closet. To feel like it was your fault because you went back and got in the car again is not an invitation for him to do whatever he wants to you. And I'm sure in your mind there was that feeling like, okay, I wasn't really comfortable with him trying to kiss me, but he's my friend. I don't want to hold it against him. I want to move past this. Then add on the fact that you're already going through a part in your life that you're struggling in. Your guard is also let down because you've been drinking. He completely preyed on you and took advantage of that. And he is in the wrong, not you. Thank you so much for sharing this story. I know that we have younger viewers here, and this is so important. This will help so many people be aware of these situations, what to look out for, and if they've already been in it, hopefully not blame themselves. So thank you. The age group that you are targeting right now and talking to and this story is going to resonate with really needs to hear this. Okay, next story. Hi Sherilyn, I've been following you on YouTube, not in a creepy stalker way, for a long time. It sounds odd, but your videos have a soothing effect on me and actually help me fall asleep during my anxiety-ridden nights. I've heard this quite a few times before, and I know it's really odd because of the topics that we talk about, but it really means a lot to me that I'm that comfort and that soothing voice to you, in those times where things can be really hard. I'm very honored to be that soothing voice that you need to just make you feel like you have somebody there with you. I will put some context out before the story begins. This is based in Perth, Western Australia. We have some of the strictest laws regarding guns. You have to have a valid reason to gain ownership, like you're a police officer or a farmer, etc. Me and my best friend have been close since we were 7 years old. In school, she was the popular one. I was not, lol. I was always happy and outgoing. After her father's death when she was 11, she obviously suffered greatly and will forever be marked by the tragedy. I will not name the victim because my best friend's identity would be revealed and I want to respect that as much as I can. Fully understandable. I just want to tell this story to reiterate that we should keep our gun laws as is. There is talk of loosening them. My best friend's mate was a GP, general practitioner, family doctor, and in the 90s it was not uncommon for our GPs to do house calls, especially for the elderly or incapacitated. Dr. A was an exceptional practitioner. He had so many patients that adored his soft and gentle manner, and I loved him like a second father. Even though he was a busy man, he would always make time for his girls and would often be helping out after school activities and sports. One of his patients was an Italian immigrant, we'll call him P. He was married to a Dutch woman and they had 5 children together. It was known that he was violent towards his family and they all became estranged from him in the 90s. He had multiple mental and physical problems. He had a stroke which resulted in amputation of a leg. This obviously caused further deterioration on his mental health. He was a patient of a few mental health hospitals before he was released on the 5th of October 1999. Ironically, Dr. A was supportive in his release and would continue to monitor his condition as he had been his GP for over 20 years. P was becoming increasingly unpredictable. He believed his estranged wife was having an affair with Dr. A. On midday, October 8, 1999, Dr. A reported to P's home for a scheduled checkup. As he went to retrieve his medical bag from his car, P shot him with a shotgun. He did not die immediately. He begged for his life, to think of his children and his wife, but P did not care. He shot him a further 3 times and Dr. A tragically passed away at the scene. Oh my God. He was immediately arrested and then detained at a notorious mental health unit, then later moved to a maximum security prison. It was later revealed that his attack was premeditated. P was expecting a short sentence. He was shocked to receive a life sentence, but there were constant hearings for his release, which was obviously distressing for Dr. A's family and friends. But his lack of remorse and his lack of cooperation with the prison system meant he was deemed unfit for release, probably for the best. Throughout his stay in prison, his health declined. He was registered as a Phase 1 on the terminally ill prisoner database. He had frequent stays at the hospital, but eventually he recovered enough to be placed back into the prison system. During this time, he continued to be non-compliant with his health care. On the 16th of February 2012, P succumbed to his health issues at the ripe old age of 86, an age that we all wish Dr. A had the chance to see his 5 grandchildren, to see his daughters get married, and to see his legacy continue. Dr. A was passionate about the mental health of the elderly, and an organization was created to help with the care of geriatric patients in our area. This included excursions, physical therapy, and a community establishment created for the older members to interact with each other and create friendships. Oh my gosh, what an amazing, amazing way to remember him. To this day, his photo is up in our local GP office. His name was all over our town, and there is a scholarship under his name at a prestigious medical school in Western Australia. I hope this story gets out, especially to those wanting to change our gun laws. There's not a day that goes by that my best friend doesn't think about her dad. It has made her stronger, and she's the first person I go to when I need help, but no child should ever go through that. After Dr. A's murder, home visits were prohibited. Wow. Which greatly affected the deserving members of the community who are unable to visit a doctor's office. Thank you if you do manage to share this story. Wow, that really affected me, this last part where as after his murder, the home visits have now stopped, and like you said, it's affected members of the community who actually really need that service and had relied on it. I'm so sorry for your loss. Like you said, he absolutely deserved to live to the same, if not older, age as he did, have a chance to know and love his grandchildren, watch his daughter get married, and maybe he would have been the one to create this amazing organization. If there's any comfort that you can find in Dr. A's story, it's that his legacy is continuing to live on and affecting all of these people. Thank you so much for sharing this. All right, our last story today. Hey Sherilyn, I just recently found your channel a few months ago. I really appreciate how you respect people's stories and make sure they're heard. This isn't my story, but I feel like it needs to be shared so others know. My mom and I was around 9 or 10, lived in a kind of shady neighborhood. My mom took care of elderly people and helped them out, most of them dealing with drug addiction. We knew this one lady. Her name was Miss Anne. She was sweet and around 58 years old, my grandmother's age at the time. We would help her and get her a warm meal or find her a place to lay her head. We tried multiple times to get her to stay at a shelter called Godtel. I hope I'm saying that right. It was almost like a hotel, but for those in need, and you would have to do chores and look for a job. Unless you were completely disabled, you had to do something, and the kids had to go to school. That's a really neat idea. Miss Ann never wanted to stay there and would often couch surf. A few times she stayed with us. One night she was supposed to stay with us but decided to stay with a new friend, which my mother was completely against. She tried to get Miss Ann to stay somewhere safer with someone she knew. Not long after, Miss Ann went missing. No one heard from her for months. She was considered a runaway adult because of her past and looked over by police. After about 8 months, a house was being cleaned out after the tenant got evicted. They had found a woman's body stuffed in a closet up top. It was Miss Ann. The new friend she was with had murdered her and hid her body. He was caught a few weeks later and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Thank goodness. Poor Miss Ann. I tell this story because no matter how bad off you are, please don't ever be afraid to ask people you trust for help. And don't trust new people too easily. If Miss Ann had stayed with us that night, she might still be here and this wouldn't be another horror story. Please stay safe out there. Absolutely, that's so true. I find sometimes the closer somebody is to somebody, the more they don't want to ask for help and they'll go and seek it from somebody who they've recently met and they're more vulnerable to, but I think it's because they don't want to admit that they need help, right? And somebody in the situation that Miss Ann was in, she is such a big target for somebody who's preying on somebody. It sounds like she didn't have family that she was close to. She didn't have a home. She struggled with addiction. So she's somebody who a monster would deem unmissable. Nobody would notice that she was gone. It sounds like she was really so lucky to have you and your mom in her life. And like you said, maybe if she had stayed with you that night, the situation would have been different. And like you're saying, her story might be able to help somebody out there who is feeling reluctant to ask for help from somebody that they really trust and care about. All right, that is it for me today. I have much more to keep these coming for you. If you would like to submit a story, you can do that at sherrilynstories@gmail.com. And as always, thank you so much for trusting me with this. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.